Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in a little follow-on from my thoughts concerning Priti Patel's pretty pointless migrant comments. Last Thursday, a government department was left with no option but to publicly ridicule her, saying her plan had more holes than Swiss cheese. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, who'd have thought it? When you make brainless comments to appease brainless racists, people actually in the possession of brains will make you look a proper tit. Priti Patel's so-called plan, which I discussed on Friday, it's based on something she'd said on Thursday, I think. For those who weren't aware, was somehow to get the Royal Navy involved in collecting migrants trying to reach our shores via unorthodox means, pull them out of the sea, sail over to French territorial waters and dump them there. Now, when you put it like that, I mean, here's the thing. I was just talking to my girlfriend. I understand how some people, if they read a particular paper and that particular paper lies to them or misses out certain facts, that they can get a distorted view of things. I understand that. Doesn't make it right, but, you know, we can only ever form our judgments based on the information. Some people don't go out seeking information from very many sources. Okay, I get that. But this one doesn't even make any sense. I mean, you've got people going, oh, these migrants and, you know, and coming over here. And of course we should be able to get the Royal Navy to pick them up and dump them in a French port. Of course, I mean, they've come past France, haven't they? And yet, put the shoe on the other foot. So how would these same people feel if France, for example, a French minister was talking about, for example, getting a French naval vessel, all guns gleaming, to sail into a British port against the will of the government and dump a load of migrants on our shores and then sail away? They'd be fit to burst. It doesn't make sense on any level. It doesn't matter what lies you read in a paper. That one makes no sense at all. So any that were actually cheering on her idea simply had so little brain that they lacked even the basic intellectual capacity to just imagine the scenario, just to play it out in their heads with the reverse being true. But it got even better than that. I mean, I talked about that on Friday. But the thing is, like, Priti Patel is the Home Secretary, a senior position in government to be sure, but thankfully she has no direct authority over the Royal Navy. That would be, in government terms, the Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence. Now, the Defence Department did not exactly stay silent over the plan. They were asked, and people at the Ministry of Defence said, like I suggested at the start, that her plan has more holes than Swiss cheese. And if we go through a few of the choicest, so for a start, if a naval vessel ever did come across a rubber dinghy, you know, a fairly unsafe vessel for crossing a channel, full of migrants, they would actually be duty bound to rescue them and deliver them to British soil. That's their duty. By involving the Navy, what you'd actually do is to increase the number of migrants who'd make it safely to the UK. And as someone else pointed out on social media, the All Lives Matter people must be delighted at that. You know, the Navy in this case would operate to all intents and purposes as a search and rescue team. They wouldn't be dumping them on France. And then I thought, so is that the motivation for Patel's plan then? Is she really actually a closet sympathiser? She's acting out of sympathy for refugees in a precarious vessel, just cunningly disguised as racism and a lack of compassion for the persecuted and the desperate. I don't think so. I think she is actually just that dim. Then the Ministry of Defence bit back by reminding her that the Home Office, her own department, the department she's in charge in, runs the border force. So when you actually see migrants, you know, coming across the channel, the reason you see them is because they're being picked up by the UK Border Force, which is part of the Home Office. They have their own fleet of vessels for patrolling our coastline. And as I say, that's the reason why we know about these migrants coming to Britain on little yellow dinghies. It's not because Nigel Farage is swimming about in the sea catching them. It's because the Border Force are. But, said the Ministry of Defence, if the Border Force are not up to the standards expected of the Home Secretary, who is in charge of them, then why doesn't she do something about that? It's her department. And if that burn wasn't enough for her, they also added that it was not an appropriate use of naval resources. They said, their words, to address political failings. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. And then they said, quote, it's beyond absurd to think that we should be deploying multi-million-pound ships and elite soldiers to deal with desperate people barely staying afloat on rubber dinghies. That being said, like I say, she is a senior government minister, and so a statement later on, officially coming from the Ministry of Defence, was saying that it was considering what it can do to help the incapable Home Secretary. They didn't call her incapable in that statement. But given the general response to her statements, I imagine the response eventually coming back to be a variation on the theme, what's wrong with your own fleet of boats? Are they not seaworthy? Maybe we can advise you on purchasing some ones that would be more suitable if that is the case. But levity aside, there is a serious aspect to this. There is a risk, a very high risk, I think, that the government will enact something truly awful. And I'm not saying that because I judge that the current government are awful people and it would be well within them. They are awful people in my view, and they certainly have an awful lot of power. You know, MPs at the moment have been far too tame, and they're not really saying no to Boris Johnson very often at all. The reason why I think they will do something truly awful is because at the moment they desperately need a distraction. They need a distraction from their epic failures on COVID and Brexit. Failures which on both counts are going to get much, much more serious in the coming year. And the Conservatives get excellent distractive capital from complaining about migrants especially, and refugees particularly are a superb vehicle to do this. And of course they can rely upon the media to help them out. The right-wing media, the bigoted media, will get right on with it. They'll put it, we've seen, they'll quite happily throw it on their front pages. And if the government, you know, actually talk about plans for it, truly awful plans, oh yeah, you can bet that they will back up the government position, and it will stop them criticising the government over Brexit and over COVID. And also, it will force the more responsible sections of the media to counter the destructive narrative that they are forcing on us as well. So you also distract the parts of the media that are not willing to back up the government on this. But there it is. But that's not the end of it. The situation did get even dafter after I did my first video. Because on Friday, later on, Priti Patel tweeted this. She said, "We also need the cooperation of the French to intercept boats and return migrants back to France." I mean, I'll just say before I go into the second line here, they didn't come from France. They're not French refugees. Just so she's clear. I don't think she's not listening to me, is she? Let's carry on. Then she said, "I know that when the British people say they want to take back control of our borders, this is exactly what they mean." What? So when she says the British, what she means is the Brexiteers. Confusing. And I know they both begin with B, love, but make an effort. The Brexiteers. So that's what, when they say take back control of our borders, this is exactly what they mean. Now, what's the this in that sentence? Well, it's the previous sentence. We need the cooperation of the French. So hang on a minute. So when the Brexiteers say that they want to take back control of our borders, what they mean by that is we need the cooperation of the French. Taking back control of our borders means cooperating with France. Is that it? Because again, I'm sorry, this is the sort of statement that can only possibly appeal to someone without the brains to really consider something. They just, oh, I agree. No thought, no thinking it through. So imagine again, like from the French side, The British Brexit government, who say they don't need international cooperation with EU countries. We don't need you. You're holding us back. We can manage better without you. They are now saying that controlling their borders is impossible without France's help. You know, because it turns out that every national border has another nation on the other side of it. What, you mean that our southern border is also France's northern border? Holy crap, mind blown. But without a hint of irony, she also said that taking back control needs France's help. In what sense is that taking back control? And then another government minister in her department, one of her lackeys, Immigration Minister Chris Philp, decided to weigh in, support his boss. He said, and again I quote, "Migrants who set off from France have travelled through safe EU states. They should claim asylum there, not seek to enter the UK." And of course, as soon as he said this, people couldn't help but point out that, well, actually, as a member of the EU, this would sort of have been the case. I mean, naturally, most refugees, let's face it, an awful lot of refugees are going to come from, say, North Africa. They're, of course, going to hit Southern Europe first. Now, it's inherently, I mean, we're as far north as you can get in the EU, or were in the EU. But it is inherently unfair to put all that refugee pressure on the southern nations in the EU just because of their geographical placement. I mean, Spain, Greece, Italy, that's not fair. Share the load, you know. Let's be fair. So the EU had a little set of rules known as the Dublin Regulation, and it does basically what this feckless immigration minister is asking for EU members. Now, you can see the flaw in this plan a mile off. That's correct. We are not EU members. The situation now is that France doesn't have to do a damn thing if it doesn't want to. It doesn't have to lift a finger to help us with any perceived migrant problems. So what Priti Patel is basically saying is that she would like us to have another benefit of EU membership, but rather than being nice about it and asking France, you know, can we negotiate a similar provision post-Brexit? Because there's no reason why we couldn't negotiate that. No. She decides to be offensive towards the EU in general and France in particular, because that's going to achieve it, isn't it? And I mean, it's not like we didn't try warning Brexit supporters that leaving the EU would actually mean less control of our borders, because we sort of understood that on the other side of it was another country that in the EU has responsibilities that it doesn't when we're not in the EU. As far as France are concerned, they will fulfil their obligations to the EU in protecting EU borders. They're not interested in anyone else's. Why should they be? Why on earth should they be? And specifically, you know, we were reminded that immigration would go up as a result of Brexit, both legal and unconventional, less so. It's not always illegal if you don't come through a normal channel. But dumbasses be dumbasses, I get. And it seems odd to me that people are raging against a situation that they say they voted for and say they understand what they voted for. This is part of what you voted for. So there we go. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I will see you later.